When you speak, you are touching the totality of space. When you move a finger, you are touching the space. So the whole life becomes full of compassionate tenderness, compassionate attentiveness. And this attentiveness creates beauty in the movements of the person. So life cannot be divided into secular and spiritual, individual and collective, political, economic and private. Whatever one does, the totality is affected. If one has seen that through science and technology, the whole global human race is factually a family now. The life is interwoven economically, politically, technologically. Can such a person be a nationalist? A person who has understood the truth, the facts. Can he concede economic imperialism of any country? Political ambitions and dominations of any race or any country? Can one afford to say then, I am not concerned with what happens out there, I am concerned only with the inner and the outer is the language of the human mind, life is a whole. So either I see that science, technology, trade and commerce, the means of transport and communication have converted the whole global human race into one family. There will have to be a global perspective for economics, politics, technology. One will understand how the present structures are founded on wrong premises. And one will not belong there. One is free of that, one is out of that. Do you see what it implies to be a religious person? You learn, you discover, you understand, and you are out of the false, the incorrect, the unscientific. Once you know the dirt as dirt, you don't go and stand in it. So life is a wholeness, and whatever we do affects that wholeness outside of us and inside of us. That is how a religious life becomes fragrant with the awareness of totality. If we have seen these points with the help of words up till now, let us proceed. While we are walking, suppose we are walking outside in the woods. Somebody comes and gives me a push. And because of that jerk, I take a few steps. When the movement of taking the steps happens because I was pushed, that's not my walking, is it? When a compulsion forces you to move from one situation to another, you are not living, you are reacting to compulsion. Reaction to a compulsion is not a free movement. It's not my movement. And our life today consists of reacting to compulsions. Compulsions from outside, social, economic, political compulsions. Compulsions of the ideologies that we have voluntarily accepted. Compulsions of norms and criteria, if we accept any. But our whole living, from morning till night, It's a chain of movement as reaction to some compulsion or other. Unless there is a tension of a compulsion, we don't act. So it's a movement of reactions rather than a movement out of our free, choiceless awareness. Whether it is getting up in the morning, having a shower or a bath, taking meals, going to bed, there must be a structure that creates compulsions for the individuals, and the individuals are made to react to the structural compulsions. Please do see this. We go on reacting repetitively to such compulsions 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, and we feel we are moving. This is not the time to go into why the structural compulsions are there and how can they be avoided. We have to turn to the other point. This is the context of our life. We can't do a thing unless there is a compulsion. Somebody is attached to me, that creates a tension, that creates a compulsion, and I react out of it. If there is no tension, nobody makes demands on me, and I can't make demands on others, I don't have any such relationships. Then the person doesn't feel any charm, any fun. Tension of belonging, tension of being attached, tension of dependency, your own dependency on others or dependency of other people on you, so on and so forth. You can elaborate in your own minds and investigate this whole issue of the content of our so-called relationships. They are reacting the whole time. Now, we get tired of reacting. We get worn out by the tensions, and we turn to religion with the hope of being free. And yet, we would like that freedom to be monitored by a guru or a master. Religion is a field where one could explore the avenues of freedom and live in a tension-free state of being. No compulsion from outside, and no tension, pressure or compulsion from inside of any authority, any ideology. You are left with life. But one says, no, that's no good. Then I'll feel insecure. Let my freedom be monitored by someone. Let it be controlled freedom. So I go out in search of a guru in the name of freedom, in the name of a revolution. I would like to find someone. Supposing one does find someone, and it's not difficult. Not difficult in any country. So one gets what one looks for, and unfortunately, that person does not give out any set of values or code of conducts, only points out the way. Doesn't want to carry you on his shoulders, and doesn't want to create any compulsions for you. Leaves you entirely on your own. Then that guru is of no use. That teacher, that master is of no use, because we are looking for a new set of compulsions. Compulsions of our choice. Disciplines of our choice. A code of conduct. Do this and you'll get that, and do not do this, otherwise this will happen to you, and so on. So tired of the old, I am looking for a new pattern. a new set of conditionings, a benevolent, shall I say dictator? No, that would be a strong word. Benevolent compulsions. Because we are afraid to be left alone to our spontaneity and our intelligence. We trust the intellect and its ways of behavior and the safeguards and the defense mechanisms that have been grafted upon the intellect. So there is a craving for freedom and there is a fear of freedom, so that I would like to walk into the field of freedom cautiously with some safeguards around me. This is the contradiction that comes up in the life of a religious inquirer. If there is a teacher worth the name, he wouldn't create any compulsions at all. Just point out the way, as the signboard points out the way, this way to Lodestar. It's a board that you can read and then you have to walk or drive your car, sorry. So religious life is an entirely unconditionally free life. The freedom might create its own order. The freedom might create its own inner discipline as it lives. But there are no compulsions whatsoever. Love never compels. Compassion never dictates. So the immeasurable, the unnameable divinity is there at your disposal if you turn to it, but doesn't shout, doesn't carry out propaganda, doesn't advertise, doesn't force you to turn your lives in its direction. It just is there. The magnificence of the divine is in its availability without assertion. So tired and exhausted by the old, one turns to the new. There's a romantic idea about freedom. No checks, no controls, no regulations. And then the inner instincts and impulses and idleness and laziness and confusion, it gets an opportunity to come up, and one begins to plead for that confusion. One begins to justify that in some way or other to oneself. Or one looks for some sources, some ideology, some theories, some persons who would compel me, who will oblige me, force me, not in a cruel and harsh way, gently, that it must be made for me. And you know, freedom cannot be tinned and canned and bottled. It cannot be given ready-made by others. The clarity of understanding is the security. I wish I could convey to you the certainty and security that understanding gives to us. Understanding eliminates confusion. There is the space, there is the clarity. One can breathe freely. The suffocation of ignorance and confusion is gone. It's such a beautiful state when you understand even about tiny little things of life. The isness of life is its own security. It hasn't got the pattern of security that we are acquainted with, we are used to. If we have seen this point, let us proceed further. We are going step by step. It's a vertical ascending journey. As there is a security and certainty in the field of known, the state of knowing stimulates a sense of power. I know. I have it. I know it. I own it. If you investigate the daily life, you will see how this sense of security gives a sense of power also. I wonder if you have seen the power that innocency and defenselessness has. A state of not knowing. I know the material, the physical, the psychological, and I know how to move with the known, and I realize that I, the me, the ego, does not know how to move with the unknown. I don't know what it is. When I realize this, what happens to me in the state of non-knowing? Do I get frightened? Or do I feel relaxed that I have no responsibility to move in any direction simply because I don't know? In the state of non-knowing, there is relaxation. There is no tension of pressure of knowledge. Knowledge has its own pressure. The conditionings of experiences have their own chemical pressures and nervous tensions. But once you say, I don't know, you see that you don't know what the unknown is, the mystery of the totality is, and so you say, by Jove, I don't know. Once in your life, you find yourself completely defenseless, naked, no clothes of thoughts, ideas, values, nothing, just denuded. And you stand there, say, I don't know. To be in that state of non-knowing. Because you do not know, you cannot act. Obviously. When you do not know, you can't act. You can't move in any direction. Knowledge gives direction. So you realize that you cannot move. You do not know. If one relaxes in the state of non-knowing, then there is innocency. But if one gets terrified and says, I don't know, what shall I do now? In one breath, it says, I don't know. And the second breath, it says, what shall I do now? Stop moving, stop doing. Stop moving and stop doing. Stop the search for a direction, a destination. And just relax in non-action. In the relaxation of non-action comes to life the elegant innocency. If you are sad, if you are frustrated, if you are disappointed, if there is a bitterness, God, no, I don't know anything, my God, what shall I do? Then there is no innocency. There is the tension. You feel that you are ignorant. And therefore, the feeling of ignorance resulting in tensions and inhibitions stimulates fear, and the whole fun is gone. The fun is lost. I know what to do with the known, and I do it there. I know how to move in the known, and I move efficiently, elegantly. Why not? Enjoy it. But when it comes to the unknown that surrounds the known, and I am confronted with it occasionally, I say to myself, I don't know. Being in that state of unconditional relaxation, being defenselessly in the state of non-knowing, is a tremendous event. So one doesn't move. One has no responsibility of moving towards any destination in any direction whatsoever. The moment one relaxes, the energy of intelligence comes into play. There is no time lag. One doesn't have to do a thing. One doesn't have to move a finger. The other, the unconditioned, the so-called unknown, it begins to operate. Oh, but I must know how it will operate. I must know what it is going to do to me. That is to say, the trap of the mind is open, eager to capture the unknown in framework of some blueprint. But the other, the unknown, the unconditioned, hasn't got a steamroller that it will operate and function in the life of all in one and the same way. The expression of the intelligence, the expression of the new, will be different in the lives of different persons according to their previous conditionings. you have heard the name of Ramana, Maharshi Ramana. As a boy of 12, he had run away. Hadn't had any education, except the education that a Brahmin boy gets in his family. And that's quite a lot. So he was in a cave, Virupaksha Gufa, in a cave for 6 years, exploring by himself, without words, without books, without any teacher. And when he understood what is what, he started living it. So the communication that was natural and easy for Ramana was the communion through silence. The expression of the new energy in him was the expression of silence. He wouldn't speak. His presence would speak, and especially the eloquence in the eyes. The more time you spend in silence, the brighter becomes the sight, because there is no strain on the eyes, no strain on the brain, and so on. And you might have heard the name of Aurobindo. He was sent to England. Brilliant boy from Bengal, spent many years and got educated, and a voracious reader. He was a very learned person. And when he escaped in 1910 from the British prison and went to Pondicherry, lived meditatively for some years, and then the expression of the touch of the other in his life was quite different from that of Ramana. Being a learned person, being a poet, and being an aesthetically keen person, he was a lover of languages. A great scholar. So the energy found expression in writing. He wrote about the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Gita, thousands and thousands of letters, wrote about yoga, wrote that epic poem Savitri, and so on. In the life of some, it keeps the person traveling around. In life of some, it keeps the person in one place. So there is no one rule and regulation that after the known is penetrated, the expression will be one and the same in all the lives. It doesn't happen. So one relaxes as soon as one realizes that one does not know. And this morning, very seriously, I beg to submit that our minds refuse to be in that innocency of non-knowing. It wants to take the crutches from the past. If and when we relax unconditionally and totally, then things happen to us. We don't have to do, we don't have to exert. That's my last contention. So what do I do when I get back to my home? I look at my relationship with the known being, my body, my mind, my brain, my speech, the things around me, my job, my relationships. I look at them, I investigate them. I see if there is a disorder, a confusion. And after investigating, I arrive at the clarity of understanding. So there is no disorder and confusion left in any corner, at any level, on any pretext at all. A new relationship of harmony and order with the known. And I ask myself, what do I want religion for? Is there an ambition for some kind of acquisition? Then let me not turn to religion or meditation. Let me turn to explorations and experimentations in the occult, in the transcendental, and get busy with teachings, theories, tactics, formulas, etc. It's no use deceiving oneself. If one is terribly anxious to acquire some powers and experiences, one may turn to that field. But that motivation of acquisition is satisfied on the material, physical and psychological level, and there's real, genuine urge for exploring the meaning of life, just for the joy of discovering it, just for the joy of understanding it. There is nothing to acquire, everything to discover and understand. So if there is an urge to learn, to discover and understand, then one turns to religion or meditation. If there is a fear of freedom, there is no use verbally talking about psychological mutation and transformations. Transformation is a total transformation. There can't be any reservations. Transformations cannot be compartmental. So when I am very clear in my own mind that there is no fear of freedom, then only one turns to a religious inquiry and turns to a meditative way of life. We have looked at religion and meditation from as many angles as it was possible to look at in the duration of 7 days. And this verbal investigation, the verbal exploration, has been possible due to the cooperation of all of you. And therefore, I would like to thank every one of you for your cooperation. Thank you. A life without challenges has no charm and no vitality. The movement of life and relationships throws up the ripples, the waves, and the storms of challenges. And it is a great fun negotiating with the challenges that the relationships bring up for us. A challenge is a situation where your past becomes irrelevant for your response to the present. The past is rendered absolutely irrelevant to the kind of response that is required of you in the present. And we are lucky because globally we are surrounded by magnificent challenges today. There was a craving for international living, international law and order and peace. And a United Nations organization was created to negotiate with the conflicting parties, bring about understanding and peace. And the human race was struggling with a miserably slow pace towards internationalism. National sovereignty has become a political myth. It has become an economic myth because of the new context that science and technology have created for us. And yet the human race clings to the socio-economic or political myth of national sovereignty. And now, presently, the sanctions of United Nations or Security Council or World Court have been thrown to winds, a magnificent challenge. Either the people of the world create a new United Peoples Organization where not the representatives of the states and governments will come together and bargain for their national profits peacefully and decently, but the intelligentsia all over the world, not engaged in party politics or power politics, will come together, organize a United Peoples Organization where it will be a genuine concern to avoid organized violence and solve the problems of the human beings living in any and every part of the globe. Isn't that a grand challenge? The old is collapsing, and before a vacuum comes into existence, the new has to be created. A challenge digs into your being, probes your creative energies and brings them up. The economic structures that were created in the last century and have been fashionable in the present century, they are collapsing very fast. From the barter system to the currency, and the use of money was a step that the human race had taken in a certain direction to free the man. But the money, the paper money, the currency, became identified with the idea of wealth. Money and currency was mistaken for wealth. It is not wealth man is discovering to his great dismay and disillusionment. So, the new relationship between productive labor, the producer, and the consumer has to be brought about. The old economic structures are collapsing, and we can't keep them working on crutches. It's a very evident fact. And so it is with the use of technology and science. With the atomic and the cybernetic revolutions and the electronic brains, the human race went very fast, replacing man by machine. And in the affluent countries, he has seen what happens to the quality of his being and sensitivity when he lives with machines for most of the day. How it takes away the warmth of the heart, how it chills you to be always with machines and gadgets and less with fellow human beings. The cybernetic revolution helped man to go very fast with creating a society where life would become impersonalized. And whichever field of activity you enter, the gigantic scale of the industrial plants, the mysteriously complicated structure of trade and commerce and business, keep human beings working in a depersonalized way. Personal relationships lost their relevance. Gigantically, inhumanly big cities where man comes to know about one another's presence only in an abstract way, by the number plate on the house door or the door of the apartment. So man played with it, and he has found out that such affluence and such application of science and technology creates very serious and grave cultural issues. The cultural problems of the affluent countries are knocking on the doors of the thinking, sensitive, alert citizens of the world. So we'll have to find out. We can't turn back from science and technology, but we'll have to find out how to apply science and technology to individual and collective life, so that the 2/3 of human race that has not gone through an industrial revolution finds out a new pattern of industrial revolution and doesn't have to follow the American or the European pattern of industrialization. Lovely challenges. Out that such affluence and such application of science and technology creates very serious and grave cultural issues. The cultural problems of the affluent countries are knocking on the doors of the thinking, sensitive, alert citizens of the world. So we'll have to find out. We can't turn back from science and technology, but we'll have to find out how to apply science and technology to individual and collective life, so that the two-thirds of human race that has not gone through an industrial revolution finds out a new pattern of industrial revolution and doesn't have to follow the American or the European pattern of industrialization. Lovely challenges. A life without challenges is a meal without spices. And the most significant and basic fundamental challenge with which we are confronted is the challenge of living through the mind, the brain. The human race eliminated credulity, belief, superstitions, and installed the goddess of reason in the Middle Ages. Developed reason and rationality, and there has been quite a glamour about that cultural revolution that took place a few centuries ago. And then reason began running wild. Man started looking upon reason and rationality, the cerebral activity, as the and only means of verifying the reality of life. Man created measures and symbols, and he wants now to verify the existence of reality and the nature of the essence of existence by the cultural toys that he had created. And if the reality doesn't have the modesty to fit into the measures, then the human mind starts doubting the life itself. The reliance on the brain, the reason, has given fantastic things to the human culture and civilization. What we have attained through the cerebral activity and the sophistication and refinement of the reason is not of little value, but it is not the totality of the content of our being. It's a part of the being. And man has become aware that there is something in us, something in himself, which is qualitatively different from brain and the cerebral activity. He has become aware of the other. Especially when he started working with the computers, the memory machines. And he has relegated much of his intellectual work to the memory machine. The computers have taken upon themselves so much of intellectual work that man is no more surprised by the feat of memory, calculation, reception of information, processing the data, and reproducing it as and when required. He used to be extremely impressed by scholarship and erudition, the feats of memory in last century, or perhaps the first quarter of this century. But now he sees that even machines can do that. Composing poems, drawing pictures, examining school examination papers, taking down clinical information from the patients in a hospital, so on and so on. So naturally, man started questioning himself, what is there more to my life than the machine I have created in my own image? Up till now, the chemical system has not been introduced in the electronic brains. There are research institutions conducting research, experimenting with the process of introducing chemistry in the synthetic brain. It's quite an interesting study. So one has become aware, the global human mind has become aware that there is something more to what we call a human being than the repetitive mechanistic cerebral organ. So an urge to transcend the brain, transcend the conceptual and ideational world that the brain has created, transcend time, transcend movement, is there. Whether individually you and I see it as an urgently necessary revolution or not, the alert, sensitive human being in general has realized that on the mental level, with the help of mind, problems of our life cannot be solved. Mind keeps you tethered to the center of the eye and to the content of the past. So it cannot move free. So at the end of the century, we are busy exploring that which is beyond time and space, that which is beyond the orbit of the ego. So I feel, at least as far as I am concerned, that we are very fortunate in being surrounded by a variety of challenges. Challenges keep you alert, on your toes. Don't allow you to fall back lazily and indolently in the patterns of the past. And rot in passivity and inertia. So we are on the brink of a psychological revolution as a race, as a species. And it was with the awareness of this context that I spent the last 9 days with you, communicating with you on the essence of religious living and meditation as a way of religious living. I do not know how clearly I could bring the issue to your notice or clinch the issues for you. But in the farewell talk, I would like to mention a couple of points. Words are not coming very easily this morning. I have been hesitating for a minute and a half because it is so easy to misunderstand and misinterpret words. The point that I would like to share with you is the law of love that regulates and controls the movement of everything and every being that lives and moves. Metaphysically speaking, there is no thing, all are beings. In some, the life is mute, and in others, it is eloquent. But really speaking, there are no things, all are beings. From a tiny pebble on a seashore to an intellectually brilliant human person, life and its essence permeates equally. It's only the expression that differs. So life is the master. Very intelligently, the 5 elements or principles, like earth and water, the fire and air, and the space, work together. If we combine the fire and water, the fire will get extinguished. But in the nature around us, they get blended together and work together not as a team, but as a blended phenomenon. In the human body is the earth in the form of bones and the water contained in the plasma and the fire that shines through your eyes and keeps the heat in the body. And the vital energy or the prana that permeates the body and the space and so on. In every blade of grass, you will see the same phenomenon of these 5 elements, 5 principles getting rolled into one, blended together into a homogeneity where you don't see them unless you analyze them. The contradictories blended together, the incompatibles cooperating with one another. So very intelligently, life the master embraces in its fold all contradictions, incompatibilities, dualities, varieties, and so on. So when you go home, and if at all, you begin your inner voyage, a voyage into yourself, and exploration of the beyond that is within you, if at all, and when at all, you begin the exploration. As a friend, I suggest that there is no need to feel lonely. Life is there. That helps. The totality of interrelatedness being beyond us, it is a mystery for us. It is a mystery for the intellect, for the mind, the petty little mind. But in its mysterious ways, life has helped, up till now, inquirers wherever they have been. And what do I mean? That such help flows. This also should be considered carefully. When the inquiry becomes a top priority, it permeates your whole being. Your whole being is soaked in the attitude of inquiry, finding out what the meaning of life is, what is true, what is false. It is soaked in the urge for unconditional and total freedom. Then your mind and body get charged with that attitude of inquiry, which is receptivity, which is openness, which is humility, which is willingness to learn. One gets charged with that. Then the simplest things of life begin to reveal to you the secrets. Simple words of a child, a bird on the wings, a ray of light coming gently in your room through an open window, anything and everything. So simplest things begin to reveal serious most secrets of life. And when one is charged with an inquiry, it has been observed that it thus happens that persons who understand and persons who are eager to understand are brought together. Because of our conscious effort or our ambitious hunting for them. But easily, in a mysterious way, suddenly, abruptly, when you had not even dreamt of it, you are brought across an individual, or an individual is brought across your path. A person whose whole being is charged with the clarity of understanding, with the tenderness of egolessness, with the compassion of understanding, and a person who is eager to learn, to discover, to understand, and set himself free of the illusion of bondage. They are brought together. the meeting takes place. How and where are wrong questions, because the human mind cannot calculate and cannot manipulate such happenings. One has to be concerned about the genuineness of one's inquiry, the genuineness of one's urge for freedom. It has to be one's concern that one is not cheating oneself, deceiving oneself. One is not imposing inquiry upon oneself because one was stimulated by something or someone. So, as H2O has been water through centuries, untold, and shall be, in the language of physics, chemistry, in the same way, in the language of life, that I am communicating, inquiry and understanding are brought together. And the alert attentiveness, receptivity, and the willingness to learn that is vibrating in a person who is an inquirer catches the freshness and the clarity of the understanding as soon as the meeting takes place. It's like an unlit candle being lit at the other candle which is already lit. And inquiry itself blossoms into understanding. So I think fear is meaningless. In the realm of an inquiry, fear has no place. Thus it has happened, and so it shall happen whenever there is an inquirer. But the mind says, I want a master, I want a guru. Of this kind, he prepares a description of a guru that he or she would like, cut to his or her size, acceptable emotionally. So, leaving aside the living inquiry, one rushes around, frightened, as if hunted by something. And it seems to me an unscientific approach to religious or spiritual life. It's not necessary. So a master or a teacher and pupils may meet. The meeting takes place, happens, not as a result of a propaganda on behalf of one and hunting around on behalf of the other, but in the simpleness of the law of life, it takes place. Beyond that meeting, there is no relationship between the two. As an unlit candle gets lit at the other, which was already lit, and they shine in their own splendor, dispelling darkness wherever they are carried by life. In the same way, an inquirer blossoming into a state of understanding due to the happening of a meeting lives freely, innocently, in the splendor of the freedom that understanding brings, in all humility, with great affection and respect for the other through which it has happened. But more than this, there is no relationship implying a continuity in time and space. They may never meet again. And neither of them loses anything if they don't happen to meet. If they happen to meet, of course, there is joy and the upsurge of affection and tenderness of mutual regard. But such things are better left to life itself than planned by us. Second point that I would like to share with you this morning is the importance of learning and the living that takes place in that learning, rather than having a terrific concern for a sense of arriving somewhere. In the reality, in the infinity and eternity of reality, there are no points of destination chalked out and mapped out for us. Organized religions and spiritual sects try to map out the reality and put in the infinity and eternity some points as destinations for all. It seems to me, and I may be wrong, but it seems to me very clearly that life being eternity, life being fresh and new in its emanation of every moment, there is no point in time and space which could be called a point of destination, where you go and say, I have arrived, nothing more to be done now. As long as you are living, there are relationships, there are challenges. The more you understand, the deeper the understanding, the more the vitality that understanding brings to you. So, the clarity of understanding and the depth of vitality get reflected in whatever you do. Life enriches you when you begin to live, and you bring a quality to the life. Spirituality is a quality that we bring to life. So, learning is living. As long as we are learning, we are alive. And when learning comes to an end, and there is a sense of I know, and I have a pattern by which I shall live tomorrow, the moment there is this sense of knowing, possessing and owning, living comes to an end and repetitive, mechanistic movements begin. You are moving till you learn, and the moment you rely upon the authority of knowledge and experience, you are only repeating. So living comes to an end, and one is reduced to a machine through which past is repeated mechanically. So there is a beauty and grandeur in the innocency with which we go home and begin to live in the attitude of learning and discovering for ourselves. I came this time to USA after 3 years. And I do not know whether I will come back or I will not come back. I don't know it either ways. But I know, if at all life brings me back sometime to your country shall not be the same as it is today. USA is passing through a turmoil, politically, economically, internationally. I'm quite confident that being a vigorous, vital young country, you shall overcome the challenges that are facing you. And through this country, science as a method of investigating the truth and spirituality as a method of investigation of truth will be blended together in something new for which we don't have a word today. Though USA might be passing through a dark period of its history for the next few years, this is going to be the cradle of a new human race because of its experience of affluence, its tradition of freedom, civic freedom, economic freedom, advance in science and technology. No other country has had what this country has had. And the religious and the spiritual traditions of the Orient have been rushing to your doorsteps for the last 50 years. You didn't have to go to the Orient. They came rushing. So all these happenings cannot be in vain. They have created a turmoil, they have created a chaos and anarchy. So many things are there in the social, the economic, the ethical, the cultural, the religious life of this country. It's all in a mess at present. And I see the light only because of the depth of the mess. It's not an easy job to express your gratitude or thanks to your friends. And really I have no words to express my thanks to the Penningtons, Barbara and Jack. They came to me in Mount Abu in 1977 while they were participating in the international camp to invite me. And Barbara, Jack, Arna, Zina, and so many others. Hela. I shouldn't try naming because I might miss some, and but the whole lot, organizers as their names were put in the paper given to me, all of them together, those who have cooperated. They managed all the meetings, the conferences, the camp, in such a pleasant way that I think not only on my behalf, but behalf of all of you, I express my thanks to them. Very unassuming way. And I have to express my special thanks to Mukund Savani, who left his business and work and everything for 2 months and joined Prabha in taking care of work that is required when a person like me moves and comes to work. I have to carry my home wherever I go. I can't feel a guest and live out of a suitcase and carry on, conduct conferences and camps. So Mukund really, without worrying for the financial loss that it must have caused him for 2 months, he's a businessman. And we had never lived together before. It was quite an adventure. I mean for him. But I mean to say my stay has been very comfortable, very happy one. And I would like to express my joy for the quality of your cooperation for the last 9 days. As you are aware, I'm going back to India. Today is Sunday, and Tuesday morning by 11 o'clock, if all goes well, I should be in Bombay. Back in India to face many problems, and as per the information and cables that I have been receiving here in the camp, I'll land in Bombay on the 4th and I'll fly to Delhi on the 5th for a big conference. It's the non-party, non-power-seeking youth of India that have created an organization for preserving democracy and exploring new foundations for democracy. And they want me to spend a couple of days with them in Delhi. So you'll be going home and I won't be going home. I can't go home. So to you I say, go home and relax and shake out the strain of living in a camp, which has its own strain, stresses. So carrying your affection and friendship and leaving my best wishes with you, I take your leave.